Welcome to Work is Third, the podcast that's all about indulging in rest, setting boundaries, finding joy, and putting yourself first. I'm Dawn Hunter, your host, and I'm so excited you're here. Today's conversation is deeply special. I'm joined by Dr. Tonicia Freeman-Foster, leadership coach, cancer warrior, and joyful rebel. We talk about what it means to survive, to protect our energy, and to lead ourselves first before we can lead others. You'll hear us share stories about navigating illness and work, unlearning stories about work and rest from our childhood, finding joy in movement and everyday life, and building a work culture that honors who we are. If you'd like, you can use the chapter markers in your podcast player to jump to different parts of the conversation, but I hope you'll stay for the whole story. Now let's dive in. I'm so excited to welcome you to the show, Dr. T. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for the invitation, Dawn. I'm excited to be here.
So the first thing I want to start asking you is, how are you doing today? And what is contributing to how you're feeling?
I am doing great today. And I think what is contributing to it is just my intentional focus on joy and embracing those moments, finding joy in all of the little moments around me and just basking in that. And we have family in town, so it's good to be near loved ones as well.
Talk to me a little bit more about joy. What is that intentional focus on joy looking like for you?
I think it's just in the little moments. And for me, joy is a part of my soul. It's a part of my connection to God. I feel like happiness is temperamental. It kind of comes and goes, but joy is that feeling that you get in your gut, like the butterflies and that intuition. And so I call myself a cancer warrior. So as a survival of cancer, that it just made me appreciate life even more. And it made me appreciate just those small things such, for example, as going across the bridge and one side of the water being rough and one side of the water being calm. And it's like, that is beautiful. And it allows you to see that there's something at work that's bigger than you. And so it's embracing all of those moments, whether it's nature, whether it's in work, whether it's personal life. And so that is really my connection of like, just making sure that I center myself in those moments at all times.
So let's talk about being a cancer warrior. Tell me a little bit more, if you're comfortable, about what kind of cancer you had and when you were diagnosed and what that early experience was like for you.
Absolutely. I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that was in 2017. And it just so happened that I was going for my annual visits and everything seemed fine. And I met with my primary care and he specialized in cardiology. So he looked at my heart and he listened to my heart and he said, "It sounds like you have a heart murmur." And I'm like, that's weird because no one's ever said that. And so I continued to follow up with him. And then I ended up going to get like MRI and things like that. And they found that I started out getting a Holter test and an EKG, and they saw like a fluid filled sac next to my heart, in between my heart and my lungs. And then after MRIs and various tests, they found that it was cancerous. And so that began the process of my cancer journey. And so I always like to tell people that how important it is to prioritize your wellness and go to those annual physicals, because even if you're not feeling sick, you could be sick inside. And I think when you're not feeling sick, that's the perfect opportunity to experience treatment in a way that is not so aggressive and that is more on the preventive side versus waiting till things just kind of, once you start feeling it and it's evolved into the point where it's really severe, then that decreases your chances of survival, increases your chances of recovery. And so I really, really emphasize like primary care visits and those follow-ups, that it's important, because outside of that visit, all of my lab results look good and I felt good. And so if it wasn't for that sound that he heard, that, who knows where I would be. And so I'm very thankful and appreciative of that.
Yeah, and you mentioned intuition earlier. Was there something that was intuitive to you that you felt I need to get checked up, or you felt something that was driving you to get this checked out?
So that is a great question. So initially there was not. It was just that time I tried to get my annual visits around my birthday. And so it was just one of those things. But I think after that, once I navigated this like a heart murmur, like where did that come from? After I started doing repeated tests, it was like, okay, this is cancer for real. And it was like all of these signs. I don't know, like the radio station I was listening to, it's like, oh, here's Moffitt. Or I passed by a sign and it's like, here's cancer. Or I'm watching TV and here's another commercial about cancer. And I'm like, okay, God, I see that you're preparing me for this. And I hadn't got any test results back, but I kept seeing all these signs and kept hearing these things. And I said, it's going to come back and it's going to be cancerous. And so it allowed me to prepare myself. And I gave myself two intersections. And it's either you're going to fight this or you're going to fold, fight or fold. And I was like, I'm not folding. Let's get ready to fight.
That gave me goosebumps because I've shared with you before that I'm also a cancer warrior. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018. For me, I found the lump myself on a self-exam. Wow. And it was around the time that I did my annual mammogram anyways, but something just told me to check and to do my self-exam. And I felt a lump, which then did turn out to be cancer. But like you, I think I also had a sense that it was going to come back. That's what it was. I have a really strong family history of cancer. My mom was 40 when she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Wow.
And so something just told me that's what's happening right now. And then for me, I think it was really also important to hope that I had caught it early enough and then to make sure that I was well informed about all of my options. So in those early days, what kind of options were you presented with? Was there anything that was really challenging for you? Because I imagine you were working, I don't know what your family situation was like at that time. Mm-hmm. What was going on and how did you navigate balancing doing all this testing, coming up with a treatment plan, thinking, I don't know about you, but I spent a lot of time just obsessively thinking about my future at first.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was married and my husband is very supportive. So that was good. But I think for me, it was the process of protecting my energy, just making sure that I just protected that energy. I think because when you tell people that, they're like, oh my God, that's cancer. Like what? And so I'm crying and they're crying. And it was like having a car accident over and over again. And I'm like, I cannot tell anyone else this. Like, I need to protect my space and be able to fight this. And so I think early on, it was the process of researching it and researching the type of cancer. At that time, that does not run in our family. And so I was a young Black woman navigating a disease that's primarily Caucasian, one of the younger people in the cancer treatment center. And so I was researching, like, what is this? What is this treatment? How is it going to make me feel? And I think my biggest thing, which seems very vain looking back, but it was like, I don't want to look like cancer. And I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I don't want people to make judgments about what I can do and what I can't do and take that opportunity away from me. And so I think it was a lot of that, protecting that space. And I didn't tell a lot of people at work. My job at that time was really, really good. And I was able to meet with HR and do the FMLA paperwork just in case I needed to take off. But I was able to work straight through. But just protecting that, because I did not want people, oh, we have your program today. We got you. Just go to chemo. And it's like, no, I have my program today. So I think the healthcare providers, they were like, for real? Like, you bring your laptop to chemo? And I would bring my laptop to chemo, and because I needed that. Like, I needed to still be present. I needed to still feel like I had a purpose in the work. And I really enjoy my job. And so I wanted to be a part of that. So I would be in chemo on conference calls, and no one knew that I was in chemo. And I would send emails, and before I sent them, I would have my husband look at, just read this and make sure it doesn't sound loopy, because like I'm on these medications, just make sure it makes sense before I press send. But I think it was that both, and like researching and just trying to be my own biggest advocate, but at the same time, like protecting my energy and making sure that I did my best to still show up in the work because I enjoyed it. And I felt like that was the reason to just get up the next day. Like, here's a program report that needs to be done. Like, okay, I got that. This is going to be my thing. I'm going to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I really appreciate that distinction. Doing it because you know it's something that was meaningful to you and important to you to continue. And I think on the flip side of that, so many people find themselves facing similar situations, chronic illness, family issues, caregiving issues, and they feel pressure to continue to work when they would really rather take time off.
Yes.
And what is beautiful about what you're sharing is that that was an important part of your journey, was that you were able to keep doing the work that you were passionate about and being able to determine what was best for you in terms of whether or not you had the energy or the motivation to keep taking care of your program on any particular day, which is great. I hope everyone who is in that situation takes that message away.
Yes.
You know, not feeling that you have to work, but choosing to do so because it's meaningful to you in that moment.
Yes.
So great.
Yes. And I listened to a sermon. It was about needing to have a conquest and how everyone needs to have something, like some to be needed by something or someone, and that gives us life. And so for me, it was doing this work, not because I had to, because I could have easily gone on FMLA, but it was because I enjoyed it and because I loved it and I knew the impact we were making. And in addition to that, like I planned 2 trips. I planned the cruise with my husband, and then we planned a family trip out of the country to Barbados. And people are like, oh my God, like you planning this group trip to Barbados? Like, are you sure you're going to be able to make it? And that was like the mile marker. Like, here's the cruise, and it's right after, because I did chemo and radiation. So it's right after my radiation. And that's my target, to be well enough to go on that cruise. And my next target is to be well enough to go out of the country. And so I needed those things. And so I want our listeners to make sure that you have those things, not in a way that's toxic or in a way that further compromises your health, but in a way that you have something to look forward to and protecting that. Like, I'm going to do this next, and this is my next mile marker, almost similar to driving along the highway.
Well, and it's a great example. I think that's even particularly relevant to the current moment where people are facing challenges of various types, whether because of the economy or they're part of the federal workforce or they're part of the DEI workforce. And the people, I think, have a tendency to want to withdraw and be more conservative with their, not in a political sense, but conservative with their actions, with their spending. But it's really important to make sure that even in the midst of adversity, you are seeking out joy.
Yes.
That you are planning for a day that is wonderful and beautiful and joyful, even though today might not be that day.
Absolutely. And it comes from simple things. It could be something as simple as, today, at the end of this day, when I finish this thing, I'm going to eat my favorite ice cream. And it's that, like, but not making sure that we don't withhold that from ourselves, because a lot of times I find as a coach that sometimes the things that we need to soar are the things that we punish ourselves with. Like, I'm not feeling well, so I'm not going to Zumba today. And it's like, that is exactly where you need to be and exactly what you need to be doing to feel better. And so the more we punish ourselves with those things, actually the worse we'll get, and we'll never be able to fully recover or evolve or move into those spaces of joy.
So I'm glad that you mentioned Zumba. Because we go to the same Zumba classes.
Yes.
And it is one of the most joyful experiences of my life. And it was funny because I saw a meme the other day that was making fun of Gen X and their obsession with Zumba.
I'm there.
So this is actually related to my cancer journey, but I'm glad because also that's a way that we have connected. But I first got introduced to Zumba because of Live Strong at the Y. And
Mm.
for those who aren't familiar with it, Live Strong at the Y is a free program for cancer survivors that allows you to work with other cancer survivors in a small group personal training setting to learn how to get healthy and build strength no matter where you are in your cancer journey. And as part of that, as part of the Live Strong program, we were encouraged to try out different classes and things at the Y. And so I'm pretty sure it was Paula's Zumba class, which is the one that we go to on Monday nights. And I've been hooked ever since. It is just, I feel so free to be myself and to feel joyful and to just jump around the room and listen to great music. And I love that. And I love that it was introduced to me as part of this overall plan to be healthy.
Yes.
But I really appreciate what you said was that we can't give those things up. And I do that. I mentioned to you before, I will find myself being really busy. I feel like I have deadlines, which I think are arbitrary because I set them myself. But but then I'm like, oh, I've got to get this thing done. I can miss Zumba today, or I can miss yoga, or whatever it is that I have planned. And the reality is that if I'm feeling like that, then I know that I need to take a break. And so,
Absolutely.
that perspective that you shared, I think, is really important. What else besides Zumba is it that, like, little things like that bring you joy?
Yeah, so I think Zumba is a big one for me, and making time for it. So I love what you just said, but it goes on my calendar like an appointment. Like, I have to go to Zumba at this time. I also enjoy traveling, especially to the Caribbean, spending time with family and friends. 2020 murder mysteries, that is my thing. I really enjoy that because the investigative, like, detective part of it is something I really enjoy, and just laughing. Like, I enjoy laughing and just looking for just the small things around me, just the beauty in the small things, and embracing that, because even that is a blessing, to be able to experience the sun, to be able to experience nature around you, to be able to walk, talk, and think independently. Like, all of that is a blessing. And so I try to really ground myself in those things.
So let's go back really quickly to your cancer journey.
Mm-hmm.
And what does your life look like today in this current year? You know, how has your journey evolved, and where are you at in terms of maintaining the habits that you want to feel healthy and to feel joyful versus when you first started out on this journey?
I think initially it was, I need to be a leader. And I had all of these frameworks and mindsets and things that had been passed down, and that I learned about what it meant to be a leader. And that means to put other people first, to focus on meeting your goals and deliverables and outcomes, and everything else goes on the back burner. And I think now it's flipped. Like, I still care about people. I'm empathetic to their needs, but I can't give what I don't have. And so it's prioritizing my wellness and my well-being. And like I said, Zumba is on my calendar like an appointment. And I've told, hey, I go to Zumba at this time. If we're having a meeting, it needs to be before this, unapologetically. And I think the former version of myself would have been like, oh no, that's not important. Or like, how will I tell these people that I got to go to Zumba? Or do I even tell them at all? And if they just schedule a meeting, maybe I'll just go to the meeting. And now it's like, no, I'm not going to pretend like I'm sick or that I have another obligation. I am going to Zumba. This is healthy for me, and it's helpful to me, and it helps me to be a better human being, and it helps me to do my work even better. And so really it's a benefit to both of us. And I'm just unapologetically like, I'm going to Zumba. Now, there are times when, rare times when things come up and I have to miss it, but other than that, I'm going. And so I think it's that, and following up with healthcare, annual visits. And I think it's encouraged me also to live now, that I've seen so many people to say, I'm just going to work, I'm going to grind it out, and then when I retire, I'm going to do these things. And it's like, you're not promised that. You're not promised to retire. You're not promised next week. You're not even promised this evening. And so how can I do both? How can I do work that I love and still live and enjoy life, enjoy my family and my friends? And so it's not a either or. It's not do this now and then do this later. It's a both and.
I have a travel coffee mug that says rise and grind, which I used to really value. And then, like you, I started thinking, no, I want to rise and take my time.
Yes.
That is what I do in the morning. And part of that is the luxury of being a business owner and that I can set my own schedule. But I even think when I was working, and I spent my entire career in public service and often worked shift work, 7:30 to 4:30 or whatever. And it was even important then to make sure that I had time for myself in the morning. And I think so many people sacrifice that for the sake of getting ready, taking care of their to-do list, making sure they get out the door, prioritizing work. And like you said, though, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't give to others.
Right.
And you gave a couple of important tips. So one is that you talked about blocking time on your calendar that is sacred for Zumba and other things. I do the same thing. Zumba is on my calendar. Pilates is on my calendar.
Yes.
And the other thing was making sure that you schedule your healthcare appointments.
Yes.
Yeah, I go in every 6 months still for imaging and lab work. But I am very consistent with going and making sure all of my visits are taken care of around the same time. And it's been really important for me to stay focused on what makes me healthy.
Yes.
And monitoring changes, when I'm more stressed or less stressed, when I feel like I'm eating better and exercising more versus when I have maybe taken some time off. So great to follow those patterns and trends and incorporate them into what you're doing to be healthy.
Absolutely. It's really taking time to take care of our body because it does so much for us and it takes such great care of us. And so really as many aspects of it as possible, mental health, having a therapist, having a coach is extremely important.
I think having a therapist has been one of the more life-changing things for me.
Yes.
Yeah, and I do my best whenever I'm in just regular conversation, I'll just drop I was talking to my therapist about blah, 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 right? I just want to normalize that. I want people to say, yes, I have a therapist too, or tell me who your therapist is. I need someone, just to make it such a part, like a normal part of our lifestyle.
Absolutely. I think it's extremely important, especially as people who work in healthcare, human services, social services, that we just take on so much. And I think we forget that a lot of times the reason that we're drawn to that is from our childhood. And sometimes those stories, our stories and their stories come together. And it's like, I need to put this somewhere. I need to run this by somebody to see what this is like. And I need to clear these thoughts of these things in my head, but also how it impacts my leadership so that I can lead myself better first and then lead others well. And so I think it's extremely important.
Ooh, I love how you said lead myself better first. That's so powerful. We have to establish that path of leading and caring for ourselves first and being the best person that we can be, however we define that.
Yes.
Before we can give that to others.
Yes, absolutely. And people watch us. So we're modeling the way. So if I say, I prioritize health and well-being, and my staff and the people I work with, they're like, I don't see it. Like, she's just working. And so they do what we do. We have to be mindful of that, because a lot of times we're sending out the wrong message unintentionally. And that is perpetuating that behavior. I need to work hard because my supervisor's working hard. Even though she says take time off, I'm not taking time off because I don't see her taking time off. And I don't want this to come up when I go for a promotion. We have to be really, really mindful of that, and really, really mindful, I think, of just the weight of doing the work that we do. Because sometimes I think we've done it for so long and it's something that's near and dear to our heart until the point where it doesn't seem heavy. And it actually is. It's really heavy. And so we have to take time to just acknowledge that and do what we need to do to care for ourselves.
I'm a big fan also of modeling the behavior that we want our teams to exhibit. And there's often such a big disconnect in leadership and the behavior that they say they will support for their team versus the behavior that they engage in themselves. So many people in leadership email people in the middle of the night or on weekends or holidays, or they don't take their time off, or they're not open about needing a mental health day or their caregiving responsibilities. And that sends a certain message to their teams. So when you think about how someone has modeled behavior for you, what are some examples that come to mind that really shaped how you think about your own role as a leader?
That is a great question. I think I've seen leadership all across the spectrum, all types of leaders, but I think sometimes it's modeling similar things and sometimes it's modeling the opposite. And so I think when you said about sending late night emails, that is something that I think in my previous roles that I made a priority. Like at this time, I'm leaving. And I had to push up against that as a leader because there's a notion that, as a leader, you work 50, 60, 70 hours. And I'm like, not me, not me. And show me the person that's working 70 and I will eat their lunch. Like not being arrogant or cocky, but like I can do what I need to do in the 40 hours. And if you find yourself working 70 on a consistent basis, then you probably need to hire another person. And so I think that's always been my thing of blocking that time and being intentional about modeling that with staff. And so if something comes up at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, like I'm going to type it, or I might send a note to myself and email that note, or I might type it tonight and schedule it for tomorrow at 9 a.m. and just practicing that, because I think when we say we believe in balance and prioritizing healthcare and wellness, and we send someone an email at 10 o'clock at night, even if we say don't worry about it, I just received an email from my supervisor. I'm about to open it. Mm-hmm. I'm about to open it and see what she's talking about, and then I might be tempted to respond. And so I think it's important to be mindful of that and never do it in the first place. Unless it's urgent, you're not going to hear from me after hours. I think that's important for me in allowing people to balance that and to take care of themselves, because at the end of this all, I think that's what we're left with, is memories and ideas and things that we've experienced with our friends and our family and our loved ones. And so if you spend that time at work when those people are gone or when you're gone, what do they remember you by? And so I'm really intentional about that. And it's important to me and to people that I lead. I want to make sure that that's important.
Oh, I think about that a lot because I want my legacy to be that I had healthy boundaries around my work life, that I had healthy work habits, that I was able to do great work and be productive while also not sacrificing my own physical or mental health and well-being.
Yes.
And I want to model that for people because I want them to go into other jobs knowing they can ask for those same things too. They can have those habits too. And so many people don't feel empowered. So it is important to have leaders who model that for their teams.
Yes.
But also, I cannot tell you how many times I am like, have you not heard of the scheduling function? Literally every email program has that now.
Yes.
Why? Why are you still sending middle of the night emails? It is unnecessary.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I think sometimes we have learned that as leaders, that a part of being a good employee is that you work, and being mindful of that. And I think I've always pushed up against that and actually rebelled against that in a lot of ways. I've never been the person like, oh my God, here's the CEO, run back to your desk and pretend like you typing. Why are we doing that? Like, I'm standing here having a conversation. The work will be done. Good morning, CEO. And so it's even that of like, what do we encourage? And it could be direct or indirect. What is the culture like? And so that is a lot of my focus around the culture. What is that like? And how do people feel in it? Is it one of those places where the CEO comes in and everyone runs back to their desks, or people are not permitted to talk to each other? And that's wellness too. And so just being mindful of that and how that's modeled, I think, is important.
That is a great example. I feel like if you're a CEO or a leader and you walk around and people's inclination is to jump back on their computer or to look busy, you're doing something wrong as a leader.
Yes.
Speaking of modeling, I had a supervisor at one point in time who did Gemba walking, which is basically like rounding, but to like a higher degree. So you're rounding and talking to employees, but she was... Every day, she walked around the whole building. She would stop and say hi to everyone. She remembered details about every employee.
I love that.
She remembered somebody was trying to quit smoking, or if someone had an anniversary coming up, or a project someone was working on. And she was well loved because of that. And she was also great as a leader. She did what we needed her to do as a leader on the work side of things, but she was a great human being too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what
I love
people
that.
remember about her. I hope more people listen to that and say, what is the legacy that you want to leave for your team? And I mean, speaking of looking busy, you mentioned 70 hours. I just read this book called Overwork by Bridget Schulte. And it was great because she talks about overwork culture, but there's a point at which you are no longer productive.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working 70 hours, you're not actually working 70 hours anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're an employer that says that you believe in people having a personal life and wellness, that should be a red flag. When people submit their timesheet and it says 70 hours, whoa, what is going on? I think it sends a signal when people are submitting time like that and no one says anything. And if you disagree with it, then you should say something, because a lot of times in our silence, people take that as agreement. If we're really about this life of wellness, that should be a red flag. Let's find out what's going on. Do we need additional support? Are they maybe struggling in some part of figuring out a part of their job? Or sometimes people pick up signals of like, if I work these hours, then I will look good for the next promotion. We have to debunk that. Like, you killing yourself and just working all these hours and running your life in the ground does not make you favorable for a promotion. And we have to say it out loud.
Well, and it just sends a message that you can be taken advantage of and that you won't question it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's such a good point in terms of thinking about how do we advocate for ourselves and the balance in the workplace. And when you were talking about the 70 hours and people not, catching that and talking to you and saying, what is this about? I cannot think of a single place I have ever worked where someone said, take some time off, take a mental health day, take your vacation time. And when they do, so can't think of that. But I was also just thinking about when I was a manager and I was responsible for monitoring my team's time and their PTO banks and sick leave and things like that, we would often ask them about their balances, but more from a budgeting perspective and not because we cared about their well-being. So it was really more about projecting what we would have to pay essentially on PTO and what would roll over, and not, I need to make sure that my employees are healthy and well and that they're using their time off to help restore themselves. Right? The driver was financial. I don't know if you can think of any examples where you had someone doing it the right way, or what a better way than just thinking about money.
Yeah, I think like half of the places that I've worked at were intentional about that. I think me as a leader, I was even more intentional about it, because what I found in those places, that even the places that prioritize wellness and taking time off, it was like, so what happens to my work while I'm out? And I find that that's a lot of reasons why people don't take time off, is because everything backs up. And so I think as a supervisor, I was intentional about creating teams where people understood each other's work, where if you took off, I'm going to take care of your work. And so when you come back, it's not going to be this overwhelm of things that are past due that you need to do. That's the part where I feel like it's a both and. We have to encourage people to take time off, but we also have to be intentional about what happens when they're off. I've also seen places where people took time off and it was like, can we call you on your time off? For what? Like, what are we talking about? If I've looked at my calendar and I've created this time in this space and we're not working in emergency services, why do you need to call me on my day off? And so I think even with that, like being mindful of what that feels like and being mindful of what that says. And also for me, it feels like a power play that you as the leadership can say, we're going to call you if we feel like it on your day off. What is that?
Yeah, don't call me on my day off.
And in fact, I'm not answering on my day off.
Not answering. Also, I hope you don't answer on your day off.
No.
If someone tries to call you. But a couple of things you mentioned. So one is just kind of cross-training your employees and making sure that everyone understands what everyone else's work is, because that is an important, I say, infrastructural support to make sure that when people do take time off, they're not overburdened when they come back. The other piece, though, is I think there's something to do with, and this goes back to therapy, control. So
Yes.
you have those employees who feel like the world cannot function without them,
Mm-hmm.
or they just feel like they're the only ones who can do it right or do it well,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't trust other people to do it as well as they do. And so it's hard to take time off because you don't know what's going to happen when some work gets picked up by
Yes.
someone else. And I think that's a real challenge, is this idea that we can control anything that's happening in any aspect of our life, but especially with
Mm-hmm.
work, right? And how
Yes.
have you seen that play out?
I think some of that, it is power and control. If I have power over you, if I only know how to do this and you don't know this part, and we negate the part where there's a significant burden and toll that comes from doing that. But I think really being intentional about unpacking that, and yes, it makes people feel very vulnerable because we've learned that you take this and that's your key to your next promotion because you're the only one that knows how to do this. And so I think really unlearning and relearning the positive way around it, we're all going to know how to do each other's job. And it's not to take away your skills or take away your expertise in this particular field, but it's actually helpful. So if you were out, the work still gets done. I think it's also helpful for people to understand that because it creates a sense of self-worth and confidence at work that no, you are a part of this picture. And I used to say all of us have a skill. So if your skill is to find the land, somebody's skill is to till the soil, someone's skill is to water or plant. If any one of those things doesn't happen, like we don't have a plan. And so I think it's important for that. It's important for growth. It's important for cross training. It's important for people to feel seen and heard at work and feel valued as well.
It so is having that sense of purpose at work and connection to the mission. And then I think part of that is also a sense of belonging. So all of those things are in your example with the fields, right? That we are connected to each other. We are responsible for each other's success and the success of what we're working toward collectively. And in working together, we have a greater sense of belonging when we have this common thing that we're working toward. Yeah, I really love that. So one of the things that I want to go back to is we were talking about things we learned in childhood. And I'm curious about what you learned about rest and joy and work, and how do they show up in your life now, or how have you confronted those stories?
I don't think I was actually told about that. I think what was modeled in front of me was that you just work, that you work. And when you get off at the end of the day, then that's when you enjoy time with your family or you do things on the weekend. But as far as taking sick time or taking vacation time, that was not something that happened in our family. That was both of my parents. My mom has been at her same job, I think, for like 34 years. And my dad has been at his same job for over 40 something years. And he's now they take vacation time and things like that. But growing up, I never seen that. So that was something that I had to learn for myself, and that I had to teach myself. And I think joy was something that I don't say we lacked it, we just never talked about it. So I think that's something that I've been intentional about, especially since my cancer journey. There's something bigger than happiness. There's something, and maybe I tapped into it. Maybe it was more clear to me because everything slowed down. And while I was still working, a majority of it was on my own terms. And so there was space just to be. Like you're sitting at chemo for all these hours or you under the radiation machine, you can't take a laptop under that. You're just there until they finish, or you in an MRI machine. And I think all of those things, it just forces you to sit still in the quietness and you have nothing else to tap into except for joy. And you can, I mean, I've created escapism in my brain, like, okay, today I'm going to the beach. But even that, it's a source of joy. It's more intentional for me, not just to understand it, but to feel it. It's a feeling that I'm consistently striving to get every single day.
I love that because I also didn't grow up talking about joy. I don't remember talking about that intentionally,
Mm-hmm.
but as an adult, and especially probably in the last 5 years or so, and as part of my own cancer journey too, I'm just thinking more intentionally about just being,
Mm-hmm.
doing less. And I used to have a Post-it note that said, be more, do less.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept it on my wall just as a reminder to enjoy this moment and not fill it up with so many things to do, meetings, appointments, activities, events, because then there's no room for magic.
Right, right, right. I love that. In unlearning, I think too, because I think growing up, there was a notion of if you were not doing something, then you were lazy. So unlearning that, that's not lazy. And doing nothing, I say doing nothing is doing something. So even if I feel like my brain is tired and I feel like being in my pajamas and laying in my bed and watching Netflix, that's something. And it's something that's worthy of me doing as a human being. And I eat, if I feel like eating cereal or pizza in my bed, that's something. And so really unlearning that type of behavior, like you just always have to be doing something or you're going to be lazy. Lazy to who? Who's even watching and who cares? Like, because I don't, like, that's your stuff. If you want to work, if you feel like I need to work 20 extra hours, you can come get this bag of 20 and add it to your bag of whatever hours you work in and do that. But I'm not doing it.
Yes. I am so there with you. I think about that. If I want to stay in bed all day and work in my pajamas and drink coffee and do nothing, like not even leave my house, that's fine. And just newsflash to all the listeners, you can do that too.
Yes.
Right? It is okay to have days where you are not as productive as other people think that you should be. You have to do what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now, honestly, that is half my battle in therapy, is talking about my overproductivity, my need to be doing all the time. And that's so many of us who are raised with, if you're not busy, you're not being productive, you're not doing something worthy, you're not doing enough.
Yes.
And unlearning that and finding a way to be that just says, maybe today what I did was my 100% for today, and tomorrow it can look different.
Right.
That is totally okay.
Right. And I think in understanding the root of it, understanding that for many of us, especially brown and black people, that came from a place. It came from a place of protection, that being enslaved, to prevent you from getting beat, to prevent you from being killed, you had to work. And laziness was something that they used it to measure by. You got to work, because if you lazy, bad things are going to happen to you. And so although we have moved far away from that, we still have those things that we need to unlearn. And that is no longer a safety or self-preservation thing to just work and work and work. At some point, we have to unlearn that. We understand the root cause of it, and we think that premise for helping us and for us to be here today, that our ancestors were able to survive because of that thought, and it's no longer helpful. And so how do we unlearn it and release it and let it go back and start to learn new behaviors that are productive, that are helpful, and that really prioritize our wellness and well-being?
That is really a beautiful idea, because not enough of us spend time being curious about what has been handed down to us across generations. You know, we think about family heirlooms and our family Bibles, but we're also handed down ways of behaving and ways of perceiving the world that we don't even question.
Yes.
And so it's such a great thing to say, I'm going to take time to be curious about why I approach work the way I do, or why I approach rest the way I do, and what can I do differently going forward that's healthier for me, and that I can then pass on to the generations that are going to come after me.
Yes, yes, yes. And reconcile it and know that two things can be true. Back then, it was a means of self-preservation and it was helpful. And right now, that no longer serves me, and it's actually more harmful than helpful. And so I need to release that. I thank it for the time that it had and the good and the safety that it brought. And now it's more harmful than helpful. And I think sometimes we wrestle with that we wrestle with those truths of like, no, my parents told me this, or my religion said this. And so we have to reconcile that. We have to close that chapter and appreciate the time that we had with it then, and know that it's time to do something different.
And just be open
Yes.
to doing it as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one thing to know in your head and another to know in your heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So before we wrap up, I want to make sure that I actually talk to you about work. It is an important part of your identity, but work is third, and that is the purpose, you know, of this
I love
podcast.
that.
So when you hear the phrase work is third, what does that make you think about? And as you're thinking about and sharing what you do, share a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I love that. First, I love that work is third. And for me, it is me first, ultimately in my life, God first, and then me, and then my family and my friends, and then work. Then and then Zumba, I can position. So work could actually be 10. You know, some days it may be 100. It's like, no, like it is really those things that bring me joy, those things that will live on after we're no longer on earth. Like, I am a collector. I collect cards. So I have cards from people that have passed years ago. And it's those things. It's the memories. It's how people made you feel. Because after when we're not here, it's like, okay, Dr. Tonicia is no longer here. Does anybody know who's another consultant or somebody that can fill this role? It means nothing. And so if we're not really focused on how we make people feel in those memories that we're creating with our loved ones, I think we've really done ourselves a huge disservice. And so with that, one of the things that I have done is wrote this book. This is my first book, and it's Navigating Rough Seas, Soul Eroding Assimilation Forcing Systems. And it is a playbook for navigating workplace trauma and reclaiming your power, wellness, and joy. And so it's a story of my journey and also tips to help other people who are navigating traumatic or toxic workplaces or just trying to find themselves. So that is a lot of my conversation in the book about really separating your purpose from your platform, because I think that's another place where we get tangled up. This is the gift that you were born with. And your platform is where you get paid. It's like a marketplace. Who gives you a check for your expertise? And they are not the same. If you're born with that and that's your gift, you can do it out the trunk of your car and still make a difference in the world. And so being really mindful of that and not allowing it to drive you into being unwell or overworking is super important. And so that is a lot of what I do. I also serve as the co-founder and CEO of Lead Us Well. And our motto is learn well, lead well, and live well, because we believe all three are important. Under that umbrella, I provide leadership development, coaching, and consulting. I like to call myself the leadership muscle enhancer. I help leaders build their muscle to be able to lead confidently and lead their teams to wild success. And through coaching, I help leaders who are struggling with harsh self-talk, negative self-criticism, imposter syndrome, and fear, so that they can achieve their goals and confidently lead their teams to wild success. And those are things that really bring my heart a lot of joy, and just helping leaders, again, unlearn and relearn and soar.
I love everything that you do.
Thank you.
I am a huge fan.
Thank you.
Really, I'm so grateful that you are one of the first guests on Work is Third, the pod. Yes. I can't wait to see you at another Zumba class.
Yes.
Zumba. Yeah, and appreciate your time here today, and look forward to following more about your work and how we can all unlearn and then learn new habits to make us better leaders and to live better lives.
Absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you. And congratulations on your new podcast. I am honored to be one of your first guests, and I love this name, but for me, it's bigger than the name. It's a movement. And so thank you for disseminating this movement and this word out to people, because it's really life-saving. And really, at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. People being well, people being healthy, people being able to tap into their joy and to be able to have a better quality of life. So thank you for this.
Oh, it is a movement. And I say the more voices in this movement, the merrier.
Yes.
You know, our job is to amplify a collective message about taking care of ourselves and about leading well and living well. And so to me, it's conversations with you and with people who do the kind of work that we're doing can only strengthen the movement. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I'm so grateful for this space and for this conversation today.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Work is Third, where we believe your joy, rest, and your well-being, in a nutshell, you, come first. If you love today's conversation, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a review, share it with a friend, or hit subscribe so you don't miss out on what's coming next. You can follow Work is Third to learn more about building better boundaries, reclaiming your time, and leading with heart. Until next time, take good care of yourself because you are your most important asset. Remember, work isn't first, you are.